My name is Miranda Foster. I'm 28 years old. And the moment I realized my engagement was over, it didn't sound like heartbreak. It sounded like clarity. The kind that settles in quietly, almost politely, like your mind has already made the decision long before your heart catches up. And my friends keep making comments. It's embarrassing. That was the message. I was sitting at my desk, halfway through a lukewarm lunch I didn't even remember ordering, when Ethan's name lit up my phone. Ethan Blake, 26. Confident, charming, the kind of man who always knew how to position himself just right in a room. We had been together for nearly 3 years, engaged for 3 months. I thought we were building something real. Not perfect, but real. Then I opened the message. We need to talk about the ring. My friends keep making comments, and honestly, it's embarrassing. Chloe's ring is 2 carats, and mine looks like a promise ring next to hers. I know you can afford better. You just bought that stupid gaming computer for $13K. I need you to upgrade this ASAP. I stared at the screen, not blinking, not reacting, just reading it again. The ring he was talking about, the one he called embarrassing, was 1.2 carats. VS1 clarity, ideal cut. I spent 6 months saving for it. Careful budgeting, skipping trips, turning down things I wanted so I could afford something I believed symbolized us. Not just value, meaning. I remember standing in that jewelry store, turning the box over in my hands, thinking, this is it. This is the beginning of something solid. And now, it was a comparison, a ranking, a disappointment. I looked down at my phone again. My fingers hovered over the screen for a moment. Then I typed 2 words. Say no more. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. I knew you'd understand. Love you, babe. I stared at the heart emoji longer than I should have, because in that moment, I did understand. Just not in the way he thought. There's a strange thing that happens when clarity hits you like that. You don't feel rage. You don't feel the urge to argue or defend yourself. You just stop negotiating with reality. I closed my laptop, told my manager I wasn't feeling well, and left early. The drive to the jeweler felt shorter than usual, or maybe I just wasn't thinking. The bell above the door chimed when I walked in, the same soft, polite sound from the day I bought the ring. The manager looked up and immediately recognized me. Back so soon, he said with a friendly smile. Everything okay with the ring? I placed the box gently on the counter. Perfect condition, I said calmly. I need to return it. His expression shifted, not dramatically, but enough. There was a pause. Did he not like it? He asked carefully. I almost smiled. But I didn't. He loved it, I said. Then his friend got a bigger one. That was all I needed to say. Something in his eyes changed. Not judgment, not surprise. Recognition. Like he'd seen this story before. He didn't try to convince me otherwise. Didn't suggest upgrades. Didn't ask questions that didn't need answers. He just nodded and began processing the return. Full refund back to your card in 3 to 5 business days. Thank you. He hesitated for a second. If you'd like to look at other options. No, I said gently. I'm good. And I meant it. When I stepped back outside, the air felt different. Not lighter. Just clearer. Like something had finally been decided. I drove back to the apartment we shared. Ethan wouldn't be home until around 6. I had time. And the strangest part? I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I felt focused. Like my brain had finally solved a problem that it had been quietly working on in the background. I walked inside and looked around. The space felt the same. But I didn't. I started packing. Not in a rush. Not dramatically. Just methodically. My clothes, my laptop, the books I had bought over the years, the espresso machine I loved and used every morning. Small things that belonged to me. I left everything else. Anything we shared. Anything that felt like us. Because suddenly, there was no us anymore. There was just me. At some point, I walked into the bedroom. The ring box was sitting on the dresser. Closed. Perfectly placed. Like a prop. That thought stayed with me longer than it should have. Not that he loved the ring, but that he loved what the ring represented. I picked it up, opened it, and looked at the empty slot. Then I grabbed a sticky note, wrote slowly. A return for full refund. You were right. You do deserve more. Good luck finding it. I placed it inside the box and closed it. For a moment, I just stood there, looking at it. Then I set it back down exactly where it had been, like nothing had changed, except everything had. I took out my phone, blocked his number, then his social media, then everything else. No explanation, no conversation, no closure, just silence. Because sometimes silence isn't avoidance. It's the answer. By the time I finished packing, my car was full. I didn't look back when I walked out. Didn't hesitate. Didn't second guess. That night, I moved into my friend Diego's spare room. He didn't ask many questions. just handed me a spare key and said, "Take your time." The first message came at 6:47 p.m. Not to me, to Diego. "Where is she?" Then another. "This isn't funny." Then another. "She took the ring. Tell her to answer me now." Diego showed me the screen, raising an eyebrow. I just shook my head. He replied once. "She's not here." That was enough. The calls started immediately after, one after another. He answered once. I could hear Ethan's voice through the phone, loud, sharp, panicked. Diego had to pull it away from his ear. Then he hung up and didn't answer again. By the time it stopped, there were 31 missed calls. 31. I sat there staring at the number, not feeling satisfaction, not even relief, just confirmation. Somewhere between the first message and the 31st call, something became very clear. He didn't understand what had happened. Not really, because in his mind, this was still a negotiation, something he could fix, adjust, control. But what he didn't realize, what none of them ever seemed to realize, is that once someone reaches that kind of clarity, there's nothing left to negotiate. And I had already left, long before he came home and found the box. The message came 3 days later, not as a call, not as an apology, but as a LinkedIn notification, which honestly told me everything I needed to know before I even opened it. "Hi, Miranda. I know this is weird, but I think you deserve to know what really happened. This isn't all Ethan's fault." Her name was Chloe Bennett, Ethan's ex-girlfriend. I stared at the screen for a long moment, my thumb hovering just above the message like it might disappear if I touched it. This isn't all Ethan's fault. That sentence sat there, heavy. Not defensive, not apologetic. Just explanatory. Like what I'd experienced wasn't something unusual. Like it needed context. That alone told me more than anything else could have. Still, I replied, not because I was curious about Ethan, but because I wanted the truth. All of it. We met the next afternoon at a quiet coffee shop just outside the city. Chloe was already there when I arrived. She looked tense. Not guilty, not defensive. Just tired. Like someone who had been holding something in for too long. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down. I nodded. "You said I should know what really happened." She exhaled slowly. "There's a group chat." Of course there was. She didn't rush the explanation. Didn't dramatize it. Just that laid it out. Ethan. And 5 of his closest friends. A private group chat they had been using for years. At first, she said, it started as jokes, comparisons, light teasing. But over time, it changed. It became something else. Something structured. Something intentional. "They rate everything," Chloe said quietly. "Relationships, dates, gifts, even proposals." I didn't interrupt. Didn't react. I just listened. Because somewhere deep down, I already knew what she was about to say. "They scored yours." There it was. Simple, direct, final. Chloe pulled out her phone, opened the chat, and turned the screen toward me. I don't remember blinking. I don't remember breathing. I just remember reading. Proposal, 6/10. Location was sweet but basic. Ring is nice but under 1.5 carats. At least she got down on one knee properly. Speech could have been more creative. 6 out of 10. Like I was a product. Like what I gave wasn't a moment. It was a performance. I felt something twist in my chest. Not sharp. Not explosive. Just tight. Uncomfortable. Like something settling into place that I didn't want to accept. Chloe scrolled further. It gets worse. She wasn't wrong. After she got engaged, the tone changed. "Now I look like the broke one. Just make her upgrade it. Tell her it needs resizing and exchange it." My cousin said the band gave her a rash. It worked. I blinked, slowly, letting each message sink in. Not because I didn't understand them, but because I did. Too well. They weren't just reacting. They were strategizing, sharing methods, testing outcomes. Like this was normal. Like this was how relationships worked. I leaned back slightly in my chair. The coffee in front of me had gone cold, untouched. "And this is what?" I asked quietly. "Advice?" Chloe shook her head. "It's more than that. It's culture." That word lingered longer than it should have. Culture, not one person, not one bad decision. A system, a pattern. Something reinforced over time until it became invisible to the people inside it. I looked back at the messages, at the way they talked, the tone, the language, the entitlement wrapped in casual phrasing. And suddenly, everything made sense. Not just the ring, not just the message, but the small things, the comments, the subtle shifts, the way Ethan would sometimes phrase things like expectations instead of conversations, the way certain topics always seemed to revolve around what other people had. I exhaled slowly, not in shock, not anymore, in recognition. Chloe watched me carefully. I'm not telling you this to defend him, she said quickly. I thought you should know it wasn't just him. I nodded. I know, and I did. That was the part that made it worse. Because if it had just been him, it would have been easier to explain, easier to isolate, easier to fix. But this was something else entirely. I almost didn't meet you, Chloe admitted. But when you left, the way you left, she hesitated. It made me question everything. I tilted my head slightly. What do you mean? She looked down at her hands. You didn't argue. You didn't negotiate. You didn't try to fix it. You just ended it. There was something in her voice. Not judgment, not confusion. Something closer to admiration, or maybe disbelief. I've been in that group for years, she continued. I thought it was normal. I thought this was just how people talked. She swallowed. But when you walked away like that, her voice dropped slightly. It made me realize how wrong it is. I didn't respond right away. Because what was there to say? That she was right? That it was toxic? That it had taken me until that moment to see it clearly too? None of that felt necessary. Instead, I just said the truth. It doesn't change anything. She nodded. I figured you'd say that. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable. Just quiet. Then she leaned forward slightly. They're not done, you know. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Chloe hesitated. Ethan's been telling everyone you humiliated him, that you overreacted, that you're unstable. I almost smiled. Almost. And they're planning to confront you. There it was. The escalation, not apology. Not reflection. Control. Again, different form, same intention. I leaned back in my chair, took a slow breath. Of course they are. Chloe studied my face. You're not worried? I shook my head. No, because I wasn't. Not really. Not anymore. Fear comes from uncertainty, from not knowing where you stand. But I knew exactly where I stood. And more importantly, I knew exactly what I was walking away from. Chloe hesitated one last time. There's something else. I looked at her. What? They think you'll come back. That made me pause, just for a second. Not because it surprised me, but because it didn't. They think this is just a phase, she added, that once things calm down, you'll fix it. I let out a quiet breath. Then I met her eyes. They don't understand something. What? That I didn't leave because I was upset. I said it calmly, clearly, without hesitation. I left because I was done. Chloe didn't respond. She didn't need to. Because in that moment, we both understood the same thing. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't something that could be talked through or resolved. It was a line, and I had already crossed it. Later that night, as I sat in Diego's spare room, staring at the ceiling in the quiet dark, I thought about everything Chloe had shown me. The messages, the ratings, the strategies. And the strangest part wasn't the anger or the betrayal. It was the realization that none of it had been hidden. Not really. It had been there the whole time. In small comments, in subtle expectations, in the way Ethan had started seeing me not as a partner, but as a reflection, a comparison, a score. And the moment I stopped playing that role, the entire system rejected me. Or maybe I rejected it first. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand. Unknown number. I didn't pick it up. Didn't check the message. Didn't need to. Because whatever was waiting on the other side of that call, it belonged to a version of my life that no longer existed. And somewhere in the quiet, I realized something else. They weren't coming to talk. They were coming to perform. And this time, I wouldn't be part of the audience. They showed up 2 nights later. Not quietly. Not uncertainly. But like they had rehearsed it. I heard the knock first. Sharp, repeated, insistent. Diego looked at me from across the room, already knowing this wasn't going to be simple. You expecting someone? He asked. I shook my head once. No. The knocking didn't stop. If anything, it got louder. Then a voice. Miranda, I know you're in there. Ethan, of course. I didn't move right away. Didn't rush to the door. Because I already knew what this was. Not a conversation. A performance. Diego walked over and opened the door just enough to see outside. Then he exhaled softly. You've got an audience. I stood up slowly and walked over. And there they were. Ethan. Chloe's screenshots suddenly made more sense just looking at them. Margaret, Elsie, Diana. And his sister, Bethany Blake, already holding her phone up, recording. Of course she was. Ethan stepped forward the second he saw me. His expression was tight, controlled, but underneath that, cracking. Finally, he said, you've been ignoring me. I didn't respond. I just looked at him, calm, waiting. Because if there was one thing I had learned, it was that people like this always fill silence. You think this is funny? He continued. Disappearing, taking the ring, blocking me everywhere? Still nothing. Diego leaned casually against the door frame. You done? He asked dryly. Ethan shot him a look, then refocused on me. You humiliated me. There it was. Not hurt, not confusion. Humiliation. I tilted my head slightly. Did I? His jaw tightened. Everyone knows you returned the ring, he snapped. Everyone. I nodded once. Everyone who? That made him hesitate. Just for a second. My friends, my family, people at work, everyone's talking about it. I held his gaze. So you told them. I didn't, he started, then stopped. That's not the point. It is, I said calmly. Because if they know, it's because you told them why I left. His expression shifted again. Subtle, but enough. I didn't pressure you, he said quickly. I just expressed what I needed. Margaret stepped in immediately, arms crossed. A real man understands expectations without being told. Diego let out a short laugh. A real man doesn't need a group chat to tell him how to act. Elsie stepped forward next, her voice softer. She's been crying for days, Miranda. You're destroying him. I didn't look at her, because I already knew what this was. Roles, lines, delivery. Diana leaned slightly closer, her tone sharper. You never deserved him anyway. He was settling. That made me smile. Just a little. Then I guess I did him a favor. Bethany's voice cut in, loud and performative. As you can see, she said into her phone, Miranda Foster shows absolutely no remorse for what she's done to my brother. I turned my head slowly, looked directly into her camera. Your sister said an $8,500 ring was embarrassing because her friends got bigger ones. I spoke evenly. I agreed. A pause. Then, so I returned it. Silence. Not from them, but from the moment itself. Because sometimes truth doesn't need volume. It just needs space. Ethan exhaled sharply. You're twisting this. No, I said. I'm simplifying it. He took a step closer. You walked away over something small. I met his eyes. No, I walked away because it wasn't small. That landed. I could see it. The flicker of recognition. Quick. Buried. But real. Then it disappeared. Replaced by something else. Control. If you just fix it, he said, lowering his voice slightly, we can move past this. There it was. The offer. The illusion of resolution. Fix it how? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Get a better ring. Of course. 2 carats, Margaret added quickly. At least. And something more impressive, Diana said. Bethany adjusted her phone angle. This is your chance to make things right, she narrated. I looked at Ethan. Really looked at him. At the expectation in his eyes. The certainty. The belief that this was still something he could negotiate. Control. Adjust. Win. If you don't, he said, his tone tightening, then we're done. There it was. The ultimatum. Delivered like he still held the power. I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I spoke. We're done. Simple, clear, final. Ethan blinked, like the words didn't quite register. No, he said quickly. That's not, you don't get to decide that alone. Diego snorted. That's exactly how it works. Ethan ignored him. You can't just end things like this, he said, his voice rising slightly. I didn't agree to that. I tilted my head again. You didn't agree to a breakup? Yes, he said, like it made perfect sense. I held his gaze. That's not how this works. For a moment, no one spoke. Because somewhere in that exchange, the illusion cracked. Just a little. Then Bethany stepped forward again. You traumatized him, she said into the camera. You abandoned him over something insignificant. I didn't look away. He said my effort was embarrassing. I paused. That's not insignificant. The tension shifted. Subtle, but real. Because even they knew. That wasn't something you could easily dismiss. Still, Ethan pushed forward. If you come back by Friday, he said, his voice hard now, with the right ring, we can forget all of this. Friday. A deadline. A condition. A test. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I just shook my head once. I ended it when I returned the ring. That was it. No emotion. No escalation. Just fact. And something about that, something about the lack of reaction, frustrated him more than anything else. His composure slipped. You're overreacting, he snapped. This is insane. Diego straightened slightly. No, he said. What's insane is thinking someone owes you an upgrade because your friends are bored. Margaret scoffed. You wouldn't understand. You're right, Diego said. I don't surround myself with people who rate human beings like products. That hit harder than expected. Because for a second, no one had a response. Bethany lowered her phone slightly, just a fraction, then raised it again. But the moment had already shifted. They stayed a few minutes longer. More talking, more accusations, less impact. Because once something loses its foundation, everything built on top of it starts to collapse. Eventually they left, not satisfied, not victorious, just louder than when they arrived. The door closed. And just like that, silence. Diego looked at me. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah." And I was, because what just happened wasn't chaos. It was confirmation. That night, Bethany posted the video, captioned, edited, framed to make me look cold, detached, cruel. It spread fast, for about 2 hours. Then something unexpected happened. People started asking questions, not about me, about them. Why was the ring an issue? Why were there so many people involved? Why did it sound like a negotiation instead of a relationship? And just like that, the narrative shifted. Bethany deleted the video. Too late, because the next morning, I posted one thing, a screenshot. Ethan's message. "My friends keep making comments. It's embarrassing. You need to upgrade this ASAP." No explanation. No long caption. Just one line. Imagine thinking someone's worth is measured by ring size. It spread faster than her video ever did. Likes, comments, shares. Because unlike stories, screenshots don't change. They don't spin. They don't perform. They just sit there and tell the truth. That's when things escalated. Ethan found out I got the refund, and everything after that stopped being personal and started becoming a war. The first call didn't come from Ethan. It came from the venue coordinator. Her voice was polite, careful. "Hi, Miranda. I just wanted to confirm. Are we proceeding with the cancellation request for the wedding?" I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. 3 weeks ago, that wedding felt like something inevitable. Now it felt like something I had narrowly escaped. "Yes," I said calmly. "Cancel everything." There was a brief pause. "Understood. We'll process the refunds. Some deposits are non-refundable, but we'll recover what we can." "Thank you." When the call ended, I sat there for a moment. Then I opened my email and went through each vendor. Venue, catering, photographer, one by one. Cancel. Confirm. Close. By the time I finished, I had recovered most of the $12,000 I had put down. Lost about $2,000. Honestly, it felt like a discount. The explosion came later that afternoon. Ethan showed up at my office. Not quietly. Not discreetly. Loud. Angry. Desperate. I didn't see him at first. I heard him. His voice cutting through the lobby, sharp enough to make people stop and look. "She stole my wedding." I stepped out just as security intercepted him. His eyes locked onto mine immediately. "There you are," he snapped. "You think you can just cancel everything like that?" I didn't move closer. Didn't raise my voice. I paid for it," I said simply. "I canceled it." "You stole my money," he shouted. I almost laughed. Almost. "You didn't pay for any of it." That landed harder than anything else. Because it wasn't emotional. It was factual. Security escorted him out while he continued shouting. People stared, whispered, watched, like it was a scene they hadn't expected to be part of. My manager, Terrence, stepped beside me once the doors closed. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah." And I meant it. Because for the first time, nothing about this felt confusing anymore. That afternoon, I got served. Small claims court. Ethan was suing me. I sat at my desk flipping through the papers, reading each line slowly. Canceled wedding deposits. Emotional distress. Breach of verbal agreement. Financial abuse. He wanted $25,000. I actually laughed. Out loud. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. I called my cousin. He's a lawyer. He read through everything. Quiet for a moment. Then he said, "This is the dumbest case I've seen in a while." "That bad?" I asked. "Worse," he said. "Countersue for harassment." So I did. Court day came faster than I expected. And somehow, it felt unreal. Ethan walked in wearing a suit that didn't quite fit right, trying to look composed, trying to look convincing. But there was something underneath that, something frantic, unstable. His evidence was scattered. Printouts of our messages, photos of us smiling, receipts for things he had bought, and then a spreadsheet. Projected lifetime financial loss from not marrying me. I stared at it for a second longer than I should have, because it wasn't just absurd. It was revealing. The judge was an older woman, calm, observant, the kind of person who had seen every version of this story before. She looked at Ethan. "You're suing because she canceled a wedding?" "She promised to marry me," he said quickly, then abandoned me over a simple request. The judge didn't react. "What request?" He hesitated, just slightly. "Context matters," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Then give me the context." He shifted. "It was misunderstood." The judge looked at me. Do you have evidence? I handed over my phone. The screenshot. The same one. The same message. She read it silently, then looked back at him. This is the request? Ethan's jaw tightened. It's taken out of context. The judge tilted her head slightly. What context makes this better? There was a pause. Not long, but long enough, because no answer came. You could feel it in the room. That shift, that quiet understanding spreading outward. Ethan's mother, Patricia, stepped forward when it was her turn. He traumatized my son, she said. He's been in therapy. The judge looked at her. When did he start therapy? Last week. A beat. After filing this case? Silence. Then the judge nodded slowly. Thank you. When it was my turn, I didn't speak much. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. The message, the receipt, the return confirmation, the cancellation records, the video of them showing up uninvited, the call logs, 31 missed calls, the office incident. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't emotional. It was clear. The judge took less than 10 minutes. You have no case, she said simply. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but she continued. You cannot sue someone for ending a relationship. You cannot claim financial loss for a wedding you did not pay for. And you cannot claim emotional distress when your own messages demonstrate that you initiated the conflict. He tried again. But no, she said firmly. We're done with that. Then she looked at my counterclaim. The harassment, the repeated contact, the escalation. I'm granting a restraining order. The words settled into the room like weight. 500 feet, no contact. Any violation will result in further action. Ethan froze, like something inside him had finally snapped. This isn't fair, he said, his voice rising. I loved her. The judge looked at him, a strange way of showing it. And just like that, it was over. Outside the courthouse, Patricia tried one last time. You've ruined his reputation, she said. No one will marry him now. I looked at her, calm. He'll find someone, I said. They just won't know what they're getting into. Bethany was there too. Phone out. Recording again. Some people can't handle strong men, she said. I looked directly into the camera. This is what happens when entitled people face consequences. She lowered the phone. Just a little. After that, things unraveled quickly. The group chat leaked. Not from me. From them. Screenshots. Arguments. Accusations. Secrets. They turned on each other. Boyfriends left. Engagements ended. Everything they had built on comparison collapsed under exposure. Chloe messaged me once more. I ended it, she wrote. I couldn't unsee it. I replied. I'm glad you did. Ethan's life shifted too. Not dramatically, but enough. At work, he was moved away from client-facing roles. Quietly. Carefully. But noticeably. Online, people recognized him. Conversations ended faster than they started. Reputation doesn't disappear overnight, but it changes. Meanwhile, my life got quieter. In a good way. I started spending more time alone. Not lonely. Just peaceful. Then I met Daniel. At a bookstore, no performance, no expectations. Just a conversation that didn't feel like a test. On our first date, we split the bill. On the second, he cooked. On the third, he saw the story online and said, Your ex sounds exhausting. I laughed. For real this time. Not almost. We've been together 8 months now. He gave me a ring once. Not expensive. Not measured. Just that something he thought I'd like. And he was right. I wore it because it meant something. Not because it proved anything. A few weeks ago, Chloe sent me one last message. Here, he's engaged again, she wrote. Some crypto guy he met in Vegas. I paused. Then read the next line. 3 carats. He posts it constantly. People think it's fake. I didn't respond. Because I didn't need to. Some stories end exactly the way they're supposed to. I used the refund from the ring to invest part of it. And with the rest, I took a trip. Alone. No expectations. No comparisons. Just quiet. Do I regret how it ended? No. The only thing I regret is not seeing it sooner. The small signs. The early questions. The subtle shifts. They were always there. I just hadn't been ready to believe them yet. But now I know. People don't change overnight. They reveal themselves in pieces. And the moment you finally see the full picture, you have a choice. Stay or walk away. I chose to walk away. And that made all the difference.